Hi, Elabelle. Okay, so we've been studying for the social studies test, and I'm seeing that it's just a little bit easier for you to hear my voice and have me verbalize what you're learning about, and that's going to be the best way for you to continue studying for the final, which is in 2 more days for social studies. So like I told you, we've been studying the posters. I went ahead and I took all your information from the packets for the study final, and I condensed them onto 3 sides of oak tag paper, poster board paper. So your mommy likes to make the posters. So the first thing that you need to know for the final, I'm just gonna go over it and just let you hear my voice, and that'll help the information soak in a little bit better. All right, so you learned about the Native Americans and the Iroquois Confederacy. When you learned about the Iroquois Confederacy, they're a group of Native Americans. It's about 5 tribes. We're dating back to what they think in history is about the 1500s, 1600s. It's about that time. Okay, and the 5 tribes, wanted to unite. They wanted to stay together. They came up with a system of government, right? So the Iroquois Confederacy was the system of government, and this is what the Iroquois tribes used. This system of government united many of the tribes, which means that they brought them together, they kept them together. All of the tribes met at a meeting. They voted on very important issues. That's what's important to remember. When they were forming the Confederacy, they met at meetings and they voted on important issues. The founding fathers may have borrowed some of these ideas. The founding fathers came later, the presidents, but some of these tribes' ideas to form America's first government. Okay? There were different regions that the Native Americans came from, and they wanted to keep all those regions united. It's important to know about the Northwest, the Southwest, the Great Plains, and the Eastern Woodlands. 4 tribes that 4 different regions of where the Native American tribes stayed. Okay, so in the Northwest, they concentrated on the water and the fishing in the Northwest. In the Southwest, they built pueblos for homes. In the Great Plains, those were the buffalo hunters. They used every part of the buffalo, and that's important to remember when they were hunting. And in the Eastern Woodlands, those were New York, Pennsylvania, etc. Those were the people of the longhouses. Okay, those were the wigwams or the longhouses. Those are those houses made from wood. So that's very important to remember, and that's your information that you need to study for to remember the Native Americans. You also need to know on a map, if you see it, where these regions were. The Northwest coast, obviously north. Never eat soggy waffles. North, east, south, west. So if you go in the northwest, it's the Northwest coast. If you go on the south and then the west side, never eat soggy south waffles. Southwest side was down here, and then more towards that way is the Eastern Woodlands, and then the Great Plains where they had the buffalo hunters, that's on the land, right? Right over here. So the Atlantic is to the right, the Pacific is to the left, and so you need to also remember your map. So important things to remember about information for the Iroquois Confederacy. It's a system of government that Iroquois tribes used. It united many tribes. All of the tribes met at a meeting. They voted on important issues, and the founding fathers used those issues and may have borrowed some of those ideas of the Native Americans to form America's first government. Okay, different regions created different tribes. We have the Northwest for fishing and hunting. We have the Southwest, the pueblos for homes. The Great Plains, where the buffalo hunters used every part of the buffalo when they hunted. The Eastern Woodlands, which was New York, Pennsylvania, etc. And they were the people that lived in the wigwams and made the longhouses. Okay, so now moving on to the Age of Exploration. There was a motivation for the Age of Exploration. That was the time of the explorers, right? Explorers tried to find new land and new territories that, was never covered before. So what was their main goal? Like, what was their motivation for going on these dangerous missions? What were they going to get out of it? Well, they were going to get the 3 G's. That's what you have to remember, the 3 G's. Gold, God, and glory. Gold, God, and glory. For gold, they wanted to become rich. Very easy, obviously. For God, they wanted to spread the Christian religion. They thought it was better for the natives to live under this Christian religion. And glory, they wanted fame. Okay, so if you're watching this video and I would say, okay, let's talk about the age of exploration and the explorers, what did they want? Name the 3 things. I'll put my fingers up. I know it's bothering me too. God, gold, glory. Okay. Now, another important thing to learn about is when we're talking about the 13 colonies, the first thing you needed to know about the Europeans, especially the English, they wanted to leave Europe, and there was push and pull factors for that. So that's what we need to learn before we learn the 13 colonies. We're going to do the push and pull factors. Why did Europeans, especially the English, want to leave Europe? Okay, so there was a push. The push is the reason a person leaves a country, right? And then there's a pull, a reason a person is attracted to a country. So why are they trying to go there? So what's pushing them out? No choice of religion. The Puritans and the Catholics wanted to practice their own ways. They disagreed with the Church of England. They were thrown in jail. They had to hide their religion. So it's pushing them out. So the reason that would pull them from Europe to another country would be freedom of religion. That's the pull. They want freedom of religion. Okay, the push is no choice of religion. The pull is freedom of religion. Okay, another push would be no jobs. Pushes them out. They don't have jobs. They can't work. They can't function. There's no chance to make money to support themselves, to support their family. It's pushing them out. Okay, so why did Europeans want to leave Europe, especially the English? They had no choice of freedom. They had no choice of religion. They had no jobs. No chance to make money to support themselves or a family. So what was the pull to get them attracted to going to another country? Not only jobs, but a choice of different jobs. What was the push? Strict laws made by the king. The king takes homes or money from citizens or throws complainers into prison. Okay, so the pull to leave the country and to be attracted to a different country, the king's laws are not truly enforced in the New World, right? Come to America. They're not enforced here the way that we have a united nation. The king's laws were not truly enforced in the New World. So those laws that made by the king, they don't want to just listen to one ruler like that. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to talk about. We're going to go up here. Okay, to the colony. The colony. So Jamestown, Virginia is a colony. It's the first successful English colony. Okay, Jamestown, Virginia. Famous for Jamestown, Virginia. If you watched Pocahontas, you remember John Smith, Captain John Smith. He was an effective leader. Those who do not work, do not eat. That's what he said. Those who do not work, do not eat. He wanted everybody working. So you also learned about Pocahontas. She must have fallen in love with John Smith. She creates better relationships between the settlers and the Indians. If you remember Pocahontas, she was the Native Americans. The settlers came in and they were trying to destroy their land, their trees, and Pocahontas was singing Colors of the Wind. She wanted to, she thought that all the trees had life and meaning, and every person has a spirit, has a name. You know how she sings it, The Colors of the Wind. I love that song. Singing at karaoke. Okay, so John Smith came and she saw him knocking down everything, and he was a leader, but he was also very kind to Pocahontas. He said, Pocahontas, let me talk to your people. We can show you our ways. We're not just here to destroy. We're here to build bridges, build homes, build, communities out of these forests. And that's what ended up happening. Then John Rolfe was an also important person for Jamestown, Virginia. He brought tobacco crops to the colonies. He ends up marrying Pocahontas, and together they create a better relationship between the settlers and the Indians. Okay? Now, the House of Burgesses. Think of Burgesses, like Congress, Congress. House of Burgesses, like the Congress, discussed and voted on important issues. It was based on having representatives so colonists' opinions could be heard and respected. This will have a big impact on future government in the U.S. Okay, so the House of Burgesses is where all the people came together and they discussed and voted on the important issues. They were the representatives, and their opinions could be heard and respected, and this had a big impact on the government. Okay, so this was all in the first colony, this first successful English colony. That was all information for Jamestown, Virginia. Okay, Pocahontas, John Smith, John Rolfe, and the House of Burgesses. Okay, another colony that came to be was Massachusetts, and the Pilgrims were very important in Massachusetts. They came to the colonies for religious freedom. Okay, it's important to know about the Mayflower Compact. It's also important to know how the Pilgrims got here, and that's on a boat, the Mayflower boat. Okay, and the Mayflower Compact is a list of laws, and then you could see it here if you very closely. Right over here, I drew a flower. Okay, so that's the Mayflower Compact, and that's the list of the laws. Majority decides. Basically, with the Mayflower Compact, that was the beginning of democracy in America. Okay? And a democracy is when the people vote. The people come together. They form people's choices. And that's the first signs and beginnings of democracy in America. Okay, and now let's talk about the 3 colonial regions, okay, because colonies came to be established, with Jamestown, Virginia being the first, and the Pilgrims in Massachusetts being the second, and now the colonies are becoming more and more, and they're having them, and there's 13 colonies that you actually have to remember, and they lived in different regions. So what you have to remember are that the 3 colonial regions, where the colonies are being established, is the Middle region. Okay, that's the Mid-Atlantic, the New England region, and the Southern region. Okay, so we'll talk about the New England region first. Okay, I have it here in green. Stony, you gotta go to bed. I have it here in green. The middle region is in the middle of the board, okay? So you'll have to associate that with the purple, and I'll read you about that, and then I put the southern region all in orange, okay? So let's just go over it real fast. I'm tilted this way a little bit. Stony, go lay down. Go lay down.
No.
Okay. 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 No, watch. Don't knock it over. Stop, Stony.
What?
Okay, this. Okay, so for the 3 colonial regions, let's go over the New England region first. New England region. Stop, Stone. Say hi. I'm making a video.
Hi.
I love you. Say good luck on your finals. Say good luck
Good luck.
on your big test.
On your big test.
Say love you. Go away.
Love you.
I gotta put it here. Go away. Love you. Go. Okay, that was your break for 2 minutes. Okay.
See your cookie.
Okay, stop. Okay, New England region in the environment. Okay, the New England region consisted of Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Stone, go upstairs.
No.
Okay, you can't knock my phone over. It's becoming a problem. Stop. Okay. So in the environment there, it was very cold winters, okay? Poor soil for farming, fishing, shipbuilding, lodging, animal furs for economy. Okay, so New England region, just think when you go to camp and you're going to Boston, okay? you're in the New England region. That's the New England trip. So remember, Boston, Massachusetts, okay? When you go to cheer, you went to Salem, Massachusetts. So when you go to cheer, you're traveling up and down the New England region. That's what you need to think about. You go up to Maine, you go down to Rhode Island, okay? Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine. They have very cold winters, poor soil for farming, fishing, shipbuilding, animal furs, and that's, the basis of their economy. That's in the New England region. Okay? And this is also way back in the day. Okay, now the middle region, mid-Atlantic. Okay? Those were the colonies, Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Delaware. Smack in the middle. Okay? There were many rivers and mills. There was diversity of European colonists, diversity of religions for religious freedom. There was the Quakers, and he's like, on the oatmeal, the Quaker oatmeal box. Quakers believed in equality for all, no slavery, and anti-war. This famous Quaker was William Penn. He was a Quaker and the founder of Pennsylvania. And your teacher wants you to remember the coexist sign. That they wanted everyone to coexist. The diversity of the European colonists and the diversity of the religions to coexist together. Okay?
Tuner.
Stone, we're not doing the Alexa right now. Shut off the radio. Stone, shut it off. Farming, growing grains, this is called the breadbasket region, that mid-Atlantic breadbasket region. Cattle, textiles, blacksmiths, hat makers, and cobblers. Give it to me now. Sony, you're making it impossible for us to study, okay? I know. Okay. And then there's the southern region. Those were the southern colonies, down more towards Florida, heading towards Florida in the south. What do we have here? Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Okay, so altogether that would equal pretty much like 13 colonies. Those are what you need to know about, okay? Stone, I need this now. Give it to me. You need to give it to me. No, give it to me. Okay, great. Okay, so colonies, a group of people living in a new area under the rule of their mother country. Import and export. Import is when a product is brought into a country, and export is a product that leaves or exits the country. Very, very important to remember, okay? Colony, you can think of, it's the mother country. Okay, people living in a new area under the rule of the mother country. So think of mommy as the colony and daddy as the import and the export, because that's what daddy does. Okay, he imports and exports America's goods. So importing, the product is brought into a country. Exporting, a product leaves or exits the country. Export. Okay, so now we learned about the New England region, with Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and Boston. Okay, those were cold winters, poor soil for farming, fishing, shipbuilding, and animal furs for their economy. Then we learned about the Middle Atlantic region. Middle region, mid-Atlantic. Pennsylvania, Jersey, Delaware, in the middle. Okay, think, baby, just meet me in the middle. Okay, that's Pennsylvania. Meet me in Pennsylvania. Meet me in Jersey. Meet me in Delaware. All the places that you cheerlead at. Okay, remember, many rivers, mills, diversity of the European colonists, diversity of religions, religious freedom, the Quakers in the middle. They believed in equality for all, no slavery, anti-war. They did not want war. William Penn, the Quaker and founder of Pennsylvania. Meet me in the middle. Okay, go meet the Quakers and coexist. Everybody wants to coexist. They had the breadbasket region. Okay, think about this middle region. When we go to Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Delaware, where does mommy like to eat at? Cracker Barrel. Okay, those were like, that's where you can, William Quaker, you think about him at Cracker Barrel. Okay, he's the king of the oatmeal. Mommy loves the grits. He's on the cover of the grits. If you wanted to buy it at the supermarket, it's amazing. So remember all that, and remember it's in the middle colonies, middle Atlantic. Okay, now we're going down, down, down. Southern region. Slaves were needed to work on huge plantations. Okay, these were the cash crops. Tobacco, rice, cotton, and indigo. Those were the cash crops. Slaves needed to work on those big, huge plantations. So they were still in favor of slavery. Then there was a middle passage, which is a big ship. Can you see it? This is the ship. The middle passage, okay? It was an ocean trip from Africa to the Americas. Thousands of Africans were packed into ships, terrible conditions, and many of them died during the trip on the ship of the Middle Passage. Very sad. Some vocabulary you need to know is an overseer, which is a plantation manager of the slaves. Oh, this was terrible. They could be brutal beatings, whippings, and punishments. So the overseers were not nice. They treated slaves like property, and the slaves could not marry. Okay, they could not be educated, and they couldn't own their own property. Okay, and this is a picture of the overseer, and it looks like he's whipping the slaves. Very sad. Okay, and then there was a three-way trade route between Europe, the Americas, and Africa. The three-way trade route was called the triangular trade. It was 3 ways, okay? Between Europe, Americas, and Africa, they had the slaves making the raw materials. Those were the crops. And then they turned them into manufactured goods. And then they traded and traded and traded and traded. So a three-way trade route between Europe, Americas, and Africa was referenced as the triangular trade. Okay. All right, next thing we need to know about over here is the French and the Indian War. It says, remember, this war was fought between England and France. The American colonists were on the English side. Most Indians sided with the French. I'm going to give you a second to repeat that. This war was fought between England and France. The American colonists were on the English side. The Indians, or most Indians, sided with the French. This war was fought over territory. What was the purpose of the Albany Plan of Union? Did the delegates accept the plan? And this was in 1754. Okay. Benjamin Franklin suggested that the 13 English colonies that we just went over, remember the 13 English colonies? They were in the Middle Atlantic region and the New England region and the Southern region. All those 13 colonies. Benjamin Franklin suggested that they work together to protect themselves from the French. He thought that they could defend themselves more easily if they were united under one government. The colonies didn't like the idea, okay? They refused to approve the plan. Remember, they had a confederacy. They were making their confederacy. They were making their decisions united. The colonies refused to approve the plan. The colonies did not want to unite because they were afraid of losing their own power and independence. So, they're all still in a war. The American colonists with the English side and the Indians with the French. The war was fought over territory. The 13 colonies did not accept the plan. And England and the colonists won the war. How did the colonists feel? They discovered they could fight as well as England's regular soldiers. During the war, George Washington gained valuable experience as a military leader. Although the colonies had not accepted Franklin's Albany Plan of Union, they learned that they had to work together to protect themselves. Okay. So the purpose of the Albany Plan of Union God, I don't even like this stuff. Okay, so the purpose of the Albany Plan of Union. The colonies did not want to unite. They were afraid of losing their power and independence. All right. You heard it. Back it up if you need to hear it again. English and the colonists won the war. How did the colonists feel? They discovered that they could fight as well as England's regular soldiers. George Washington gained valuable experience as a military leader. And although the colonies had not accepted Benjamin Franklin's Albany Plan of Union, they learned they had to work together to protect themselves. What happened after the war? British colonists wanted to move to the newly won land. Okay. England won the war. So now British colonists wanted to move to the newly won land. Indians fought these newcomers. To stop the settlement, the British Parliament government ordered the Proclamation of 1763. That was a law that stated that colonists could not settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. This made the colonists angry, but that territory was already, being lived on. Okay, so the British Parliament ordered the Proclamation of 1763. It's a law that stated that colonists could not settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. Okay, they didn't like it, but that's what they did. Okay, so now the next information you need to learn about is the road to revolution. Okay. Why did England need money? Why did they tax the colonies? British had a huge debt from the French and the Indian War. Okay, so Britain was in debt. Okay, so they said no taxation without representation. This is on the road to revolution. Some colonists felt that Britain had no right to tax them because they had no representation in Parliament, where the laws are made in England. No taxation without representation. They wanted to be represented. They wanted to make the laws in their own area. Okay? So there was loyalists. This says Tories, I don't know why, but loyalists, the colonists who supported the British. The loyalists were the colonists who supported the British. The patriots were the colonists who were against Britain. And boycott was a form of protest to refuse to buy goods from a company or a country. And that's what's the three important vocabulary words. Now, there was a definition of each act and what did it lead to. I'm going to tell you the act. I'm going to tell you what it did and what happened when the act was passed. Annabelle.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't know you were recording.
Yeah, I'm recording. Okay, Stamp Act. The Stamp Act. Stamp. It required all documents to... Okay, I hit it, but it fell. Okay, so think about a stamp. What does a stamp do? It stamps down on a document, right? You stamp it down. Required all documents to carry an official stamp showing that a tax has been paid. The Stamp Act was for newspapers, contracts, diplomas, playing cards, etc. What happened when that act was passed? This affected every colonist. Colonists protested. They burned paper, tar, and feathered British employees. They boycotted British goods. Protests were organized by the Sons of Liberty. So not everybody liked the Stamp Act. Maybe they thought it was a big pain in the ass. Then there was a Tea Act. What did it do? Colonists were told that they couldn't only buy tea from English. Colonists were told that they could only buy tea from British East India Company, and they had to pay a tax. And what happened when that act was passed? They had the Boston Tea Party. Who were the Sons of Liberty? Secret society that formed to oppose British policies. So Sons of Liberty was a secret society. They opposed British policies. Samuel Adams was the leader of the Sons of Liberty. Samuel Adams, leader of the Sons of Liberty. Okay. Explain the events of the Boston Massacre. Explain, the results of the Boston Massacre. A protest involved a group of colonists yelling and throwing things at a British guard. He called for reinforcements. A gun went off, we don't know why, and the rest of the soldiers started firing. This could have been a misunderstanding or an accident, but 5 colonists were killed. Paul Revere engraved the scene and used it as propaganda, which is information that is meant to convince you of something. The British commander seems to be ordering the soldiers to shoot. Some of the soldiers have mean smiles on their faces. The colonists are unarmed. There is a sign that says Butcher's Hall on the building where soldiers stayed. This sign did not actually exist. Butcher is the killer. There is an assassin firing from one of the windows in Butcher Hall. He is on the side of the British. You just sat down like a bat out of hell. Okay, stop. There is a dog at the front of the engraving. This possibly shows that a colonist was doing something as innocent as walking his dog that night. The caption says Bloody Massacre. And we're talking about this photo here. This comic.
Wow.
All about quitting. Okay. Now, so that was all the Boston Massacre, okay? It was Bloody Massacre. Really, really terrible. Okay, now, the Declaration of Independence. Explain to the world the reasons for separating from Britain. That was the purpose of the Declaration of Independence, explaining to the world the reasons for separating from Britain. The author of the Declaration of Independence is Thomas Jefferson. It was on July 4th, 1776, otherwise known as July 4th, Independence Day.
Wow, America's birthday.
America's birthday. Part 1, ideas about natural rights and government. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that is quoted in the Declaration of Independence. In Part 2, there were complaints against King George III, British wrongs. That had to do with the reasons of quartering troops without consent, banning of trade from other countries, taxation without representation. And Part 3 was the announcement of independence, finally breaking free. We are now the United States of America. Britain does not control us anymore. So that was the birthday of America and American independence. Okay, now. Okay, this is important. This was analyzing a political cartoon. It was the Join or Die. Okay? On May 9th, 1754, Benjamin Franklin printed the first political cartoon in American history. It was a woodcut of a cut-up snake. The title said Join or Die in his newspaper. The Pennsylvania Gazette was the name of the newspaper. Okay, and Benjamin Franklin was the first one who made this political cartoon. Okay, it was talking about the Albany Plan of Union. We talked about that Albany Plan of Union before. Okay, so this is the title caption of the cartoon, Join or Die. What does each segment of the snake represent? Each segment represents a colony or region. So if you look, NC, North Carolina, South Carolina, V is probably Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and I think that's it. Okay, so which statement best describes the message of the cartoon? Never cut up a snake. These colonies must unite or be destroyed. If a snake grows back together, the colonies will be strong. Join or die.
The second one.
Colonies must unite or be destroyed. Okay, the cartoon was created by who?
Your mom.
Who created it, Ellabelle?
Your mom.
No, not my mom. Benjamin Franklin. Think about Poppy. Poppy Frank. Benjamin Franklin. Okay. The idea of this was the cartoon was supporting the Albany Plan of Union. Okay, joiners. Alabelle! She's crazy. She's going to fail if she doesn't listen. Mommy's studying harder than her. I'm trying so hard. Oh, God. That was the road to revolution. Now we've arrived. Okay. American Revolution. We're over here. Okay. In the green. American Revolution. George Washington was elected as Commander-in-Chief of the Army. George Washington. Now he's the Commander-in-Chief of the Army in the beginning of the American Revolution. Put these battles in order and label them. Okay, first turning point, last major. Yorktown, Lexington, and Concord, Saratoga. Okay, in order. The Lexington and Concord was the start of the American Revolution. Saratoga was the turning point, and Yorktown was the last battle. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Lexington and Concord was the start of the American Revolution. The turning point was Saratoga, and the last battle was Yorktown, Battle of Yorktown. Which country helped us during the war? America. Which one helped us? You got it. It's France. France helped us during the American Revolution War. Okay, so let's talk about fighting styles and weapons. The British used European style, which was rows of soldiers so that there could be firing of guns. Colonists used guerrilla warfare and European style. The disadvantages of a musket was it was slow to load, and the disadvantages of a cannon, shooting something out of a cannon, was it had to cool down. Fiefs and drums were used as a form of communication. And that is the information you need to know for the American Revolution. The next thing you need to know is the Treaty of Paris. Ratified April 15th, 1783, 8 years after Lexington and Concord, which was the start of the American Revolution. An argument between America and Britain that officially ends the revolution. America and Britain had an agreement between America and Britain that officially ends the revolution. United States of America is recognized as an independent nation, which is a country colonists have control over all of the land. So that was the Treaty of Paris. When America and Britain finally come to an agreement and end the revolution. And the United States of America is recognized as an independent nation. Country colonists have control over all the land. Okay. Articles of Confederation. What were the major weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? There were 3 major weaknesses. Did not unify the country. Could not raise money to pay debt or support a military. And number 3, could not print a main currency to be used in the nation. So the Articles of Confederation did not unify the country, could not raise money to pay debt or support a military, and could not print main currency to be used in the nation. Why did the delegates, politicians decide to create a new government instead? They knew Americans were unhappy and having economic troubles. The country was unorganized and ununified. Articles of Confederation were doing a poor job of running the country. So the delegates and politicians decided to create a new government because they knew, the delegates and politicians knew, that Americans were unhappy and having economic troubles. The country was unorganized and ununified. The Articles of Confederation were doing a poor job of running the country. They were weak. They didn't unify it. They didn't raise money. They didn't support a military. They couldn't print a main currency. So, the agreement that is reached by 2 arguing groups was a compromise. Both sides have to give something up. That was a compromise, an agreement that is reached by two arguing groups, and both sides have to give something up. What were the main issues, solutions, compromises discussed at the Constitutional Convention? You must have watched a Snoopy movie because your teacher said, think of the Snoopy movie. Okay, here's an issue and here's the solution compromise. How many representatives can each state have in the U.S. government? How many representatives can each state have in the U.S. government? The Great Compromise, 2 House legislatures. The Senate and the House of Reps. The Senate, every state gets 2 representatives and senators automatically. And the House of Representatives, each state gets representatives based on its population. So how many representatives can each state have in the government? 2. A Senate and a House of Representatives. That was the big compromise. Can slaves count when a population is being counted for a state? Do slaves count? Well, everybody should count. Let's just see what it says. It was called the 3/5 Compromise. For every 5 slaves, 3 of them will count for population. For example, if a state has 5,000 slaves, 3,000 of them would be included in the state's population count. Well, I think that's bullshit, but that was how it was back in the day. Should slavery be legal? There was a slave trade commerce compromise. Slavery will be allowed for another 20 years. It's also bullshit, but okay. So we're still waiting. What did the Anti-Federalists argue needed to be added to the Constitution for it to be ratified? It added the Bill of Rights. This spells out the basic rights of all Americans. Having these added to the Constitution would ensure that rights would be available to all Americans. So Anti-Federalists argue that a Bill of Rights needed to be added to the Constitution for that to be ratified. For basic rights of all Americans, these added to the Constitution would ensure that rights would be available for all Americans. Okay, so we're done with those 2 posters. Mommy made you one more. Okay, we're still talking about government. I didn't know this was going to be an hour of information, but we have a huge test coming up. So that was 40 minutes, and I hope I can get through the next in 5. Government. According to the preamble, oh God, I know this part. From where does power come from? It comes from the people, not the king. Okay, now I knew about the preamble. So, Mom, you can memorize. I memorize it, and I sang in a song. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty. Ourselves and our posterity do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It's the only thing. If I memorize it, because I heard it a million times, then put it to a song. Even if you need to put all this information to a song, just do it, and then you learn it, okay? So according to the preamble, where does power come from? The people, not the king. There were 3 branches of the government, okay? There is still, but there were. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, okay? The executive branch enforced the laws, and the leader was the president. Executive branch enforced the laws. E, executive, E, enforce. Who enforces it? The president. The legislative branch, L, legislative, create the laws. L, laws. Legislative, create the laws. Executive, enforce the laws. Who created the laws? The House of Reps and the Senate. Both Congress. Now, the judicial branch makes sure the laws are followed by the Constitution, and that is from the Supreme Court and the 9 justices. Got it? Judicial justices. Try to remember. Principles explaining the principles. I'm going to tell you, and you're going to memorize. The popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means people rule. Okay, I'll give you a minute to say it. What is the popular sovereignty? You got it. People rule. Limited government. Limited. Limit. People can limit the power of government. What is the limited government? Separation of powers is a principle. Each branch, executive, legislative, judicial, has its own powers. This way, one doesn't have too much power. You want it equal. Separation of powers. Checks and balances. Check on the other branch. Keep an eye on it so it doesn't get too powerful. Checks and balances. You got to check it, put your eyes on it. Make sure that it doesn't get too powerful. Federalism. Some powers are given to the federal government. Some powers are given to the state governments. Some powers are shared between the two. So federalism, some powers go to the federal government. Some powers are given to the state governments. Flexibility. Our government and constitution are flexible. Not like they can do cartwheel, like they're flexible, like they are easy to change. They go with the flow. The Constitution can change with the times, and we can add amendments. So this is like the beginning of the government. Like this is like the first government. They're having, it's more established than when we started on the first poster with the Native Americans and their first kind of government and, deciding what's going on and unifying the colonies. All those weren't there yet. Now we've built. We got our colonies. We've established things. We've gone through wars. We've earned more territory. We've fought the wars. America expanded, and now all the people from Britain and France, everyone's helping America, coming over to America. Now we're in America, and America's so powerful and so big and so great and so becoming so beautiful. We got an independence declaration, and now we're forming this government. There's a new preamble. We the people. Okay, we the people, not a king. No more listening to the King of England and King of Britain and having him control it. We're going to have a president. We're going to have a vice president. We're going to start with the government. So there's flexible. So now they made the Constitution with the executive and the legislative and the judicial branches. 3 different branches with 3 different purposes. Executive enforces the laws, and that comes from the president. The legislative creates the laws. There's 2 leaders, the House of Reps and the Senate. And both of those are members of the Congress. And there's a judicial branch that says make sure the laws are followed by the Constitution. The judicial branch has a Supreme Court and 9 justices. We're establishing a big government here. Okay, and now there's principles. There's popular sovereignty, which is the people. The people rule. We have a democracy. Limited government. People can limit the power of government. Separation of powers. Each branch, executive, legislative, judicial, has its own powers, and that's why we don't have too much power in one branch. They have checks and balances. They check on the other branches. They keep an eye on it so it doesn't get too powerful. There's federalism. Some powers are given to the federal government. Some powers are given to the state government. Some powers are shared. And there's flexibility. Our government and constitution are flexible. The Constitution can change with the times, and we can add amendments. Now, what is the Bill of Rights? Amendments 1 through 10. It spells out the basic rights of all Americans. Give some examples. First Amendment, freedom of religion. And then there's freedom of speech. I don't know if you need to know all the amendments, but they're making amendments. They're making changes, and they're giving amendments 1 through 10. Now, Industrial Revolution. Okay, the Industrial Revolution was a time period where there was major change in the business world. That meant that goods started to be made by machines and not hands. So we're really come a long way. The machines are starting to do things and take away people's jobs and make, working much easier. And, we're just moving in a more industrial time period. The Industrial Revolution, a time period when major change was to the business world, where goods started being made by machines. Okay? What were the effects of the Erie Canal? Farmers could ship crops to major cities. This was quicker and cheaper, and New York City becomes even more important in the world. All right, we're almost done. It's almost an hour also. Provide an example of a precedent established by President Washington. 2 terms only for a president. Oh, so they could serve for 2 terms. What were the effects of the Louisiana Purchase on the U.S.? Here's some territorial acquisitions. United States, the 1800, Louisiana Territory, 1803. Florida in 1819. Then we moved with Oregon Country, 1846. The Mexican Cession, 1848. The Gadsden Purchase, 1853. Okay. So, results of the Louisiana Purchase. A positive result, we learned about the U.S. grew. And we learned about new peoples, plants, and animals and land. And the U.S. gained fertile, healthy Louisiana land. Right here. And the U.S. controlled the Mississippi River. And eventually, we acquired those new territorial acquisitions. We acquired 15 new states, which was Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, North and South Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, Texas, New Mexico, and Montana. So the results of the Louisiana Purchase was that the U.S. grew by getting all these new states. We learned about new people. We learned about plants, animals, land, and we gained fertile, healthy Louisiana land. The negatives of the Louisiana Purchase was fighting with the Indians. Indians were forced off their land, and buffalo was hunted near to extinction because I guess that's, the result of what happened with buying, and acquiring all these new territories. We needed to make room for houses and bridges and people and land, and we had to kind of get rid of, Indians were forced off their land, and we had to fight with them and take over. Okay, so that's the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, that's pretty much the last thing you need to know is manifest destiny. A belief that something is meant to happen, especially that America would own land from coast to coast. Manifest destiny. We need to believe that something is meant to happen, especially that America would own land from coast to coast. America's really expanding now. We're creating the 50 nifty United States of America. Give some examples of how the U.S. government acquired land in the West. The Mexican-American War gives us the Mexican Cession, which is land that became California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of New Mexico and Colorado. And then there was a treaty with England. And the treaty with England gave us the Oregon Territory. So during this manifest destiny, where we manifested that America would grow, that America would get more, people living from coast to coast, that Americans would own the land. That's the destiny that we created for ourselves, and we had a manifest destiny, and we got all the land that became all of these states. Very interesting, Elabelle. You have a lot to learn, a lot to listen to. So go back, start with the first poster, go point to what I showed you. Okay, put my face all the way up here for you to see. And if your friends are going to make fun of me on this video, All right, well, anyway, I hope everybody does great on the final. Let's do this so then you can have a great summer. Okay. Now it's watchy time. We love you.